then we went into the library and we found these wonderful reports from the Board of Education. Each principal was required to write a report about his or her school. This one is from 1918. And then the microfilm in the library is about newspapers. This is the Independent Press, 1926. So if we had an idea of the time when something was occurring by somebody's clothing or some clue in the photograph, we went to the microfilm and looked through page after page after page on the newspaper, trying to find a clue as to who was in the picture or what was going on in the picture. But sometimes, as Mark will tell you, with a picture like this, it just didn't work. We just didn't have anything. So I would say to Mark, I've been working for this for 3 or 4 days. I can't get anything. I can't get a hook. I can't write about it. He said, give it to Fred. Let him schmooze. So that night when we got together, we'd hand Fred the picture, and we'd say, do you remember this? Do you remember anything about what was happening or where it is? And Fred would go on and on and on, and I'd be writing furiously, getting it down. So many of the captions in the book are Fred just talking about what he's looking at.
Does anybody recognize this, by the way? Can you see it? You can't see it. I'm sorry. But you can come up later and have a look. But this lot, which is vacant, is now vacant again. Do you know why? The Plaza building has been demolished, and it stood right here. Mm-hmm. That is the building that had the rounded corner that's down by the Lackawanna Station. The Seven Hills Restaurant was there. Mm. This building has been demolished, but this one is still there. This is Washington Street coming down to the railroad. And this was a Victorian house of about 1870, and at one time, believe it or not, Washington Street was the place to live. And the newspapers of the time say about the beautiful gardens and the distinguished people who lived there. 30 years later, you wouldn't give 2 cents for it. It went downhill very quickly. But for a while, it was the garden spot of Bloomfield. It was a shame what happened to it.
And Gene would write that down. And
then we'd come across a picture that we couldn't use. Most of the time it was because it was badly faded or it was torn. This is just one of my favorites. I love it. And Fred and I talked so much about how we could possibly get it into the book.
Make the book that big.
It's all the kids in Sacred Heart School when the school was operating on Bloomfield Avenue. And it's such a wonderful, wonderful photograph, but we couldn't do it.
Do you know the year?
Yes, I'll tell you in a minute, if these lights are bright enough for me to see. Another photograph was of the Women's Club, and what is the name of the house across the street? It goes out of my head from the post office. That was used almost as
the G. Lee Stout
Home.
It was used as the Women's Club.
And all the ladies are sitting in front of this home that was used almost as a civic center by the town before the civic center was built. And they're all wearing hats, and they all have gloves, and they're sitting with their legs crossed, very prim there. I love the picture, but it's this long, so we couldn't use it. We'd look at a photograph, and I would look at it, and Fred would say, well, not that the age of the photograph had to do with our selection. If it had people in it, Fred wanted it. If it had animals in it, I wanted it. If I saw a horse, I'd say, oh, we have to use this one. Fred would look at it and he would say, well, it's not that old. And I would look at it and I would say, well, it's pretty old. And Mark would look at it and he would say, are you kidding me? Because to him, 1950 was old. You know, that was out.
Well, what we do use for dating pictures, if there's a vehicle of some kind, if it's a car especially, you can tell pretty much the date on it. If there's a woman in the picture, you can tell by what she's wearing. That if her skirt's down to here, for example, or if it's up to here, that gives you a better idea of how old, and you check the hats. They changed. There was one year when they were down like this, and then another year when they were on the side of the head. And anyhow, men always look the same. You get a suit with a pair of slacks. What can you do with that? But the same with scenes where buildings have been demolished. If you know roughly the year when a building was built or torn down, that'll give you another idea of when the picture was taken. What really destroyed me was the demolition of the Thomas Oakes house on Belleville Avenue, which stood next to the canal and was just where those apartments are, and across the street is the Oakside Cultural Center. That house was built in 1853 and demolished in 1943. And I went into the house as they were tearing it apart, and I saw this beautiful oval mirror on the wall in the hall, and a beautiful crystal chandelier in the library, and I thought, I could never afford to buy those things. I said, how much? Well, $15 for the chandelier and $10 for the mirror. So somehow I got together $25 and got them, and they're in my home today. I'm very, very happy that I have them. But I wish the house were still there, because, but I do understand why these people moved out. There were just 2 people there. They had 17 rooms. They closed off the top floor. It was during the war, and coal was hard to get. They were freezing, and they were rattling around in this mansion that was too big for them. So they moved to East Orange to a very warm, comfortable apartment, and the house was demolished. Nobody else wanted it, because who wants 17 rooms? Not even today you don't want 17 rooms. It was a shame.
We had a